Hello everyone, welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, the show where I review stuff that from my collection that's mostly pretty good and maybe one of the best films of all time. And you get some films that are just straight up just garbage and should remain in the depths of hell. Now, I'm really sorry that this video isn't coming out at the usual 12 to 2 p.m. slot. It's just I have a lot of, personal stuff going on. So I had to take care of that stuff first, and completely forgot about I had to make a video today, so that's why it's coming out a little bit later. Um, but, might as well get a video out today in general instead of, not doing it at all. Um, but yeah, so with that little note out of the way, as you guys can most likely tell by the title and the thumbnail, well, all of you guys can clearly tell, um, we are continuing on with the Rambo series, where I talk about the third installment of the Rambo franchise, and is a for me a big step up from part two, and that is Rambo III, which came out on May 25th of 1988, with a budget of 63 million. Domestically, it made 53 million, and worldwide it made over 188 million. So I guess you could technically consider this movie a success, even though domestically it really didn't do that well, considering that it made less than its actual budget. Um, but and this was directed by Peter MacDonald, who I never really. He's more assistant director kind of guy. I never really heard of for directing famous movies. I think he's probably gone on to do a lot of great works. I'm not sure, but this is the only film I really recognized it from. And you know what? I'm gonna be completely honest about this. I think this is better than two. I think this is way better than number two. Not saying that number two is a bad movie per se, but I just think that in terms of the story and the character arcs, I think the three strongly outdoes number two by a long shot. Um, but anyway, so let's get on to that plot. So Colonel Sam Troutman, played by the final time by Richard Crenna, travels to Thailand, hoping to convince veteran John Rambo, played by once again Sylvester Stallone, to accompany him on a training mission to Afghanistan. When Rambo refuses, Troutman decides to go alone. But while trying to help the Mahajidi, I'm really sorry if I butchered that, which I most likely did. Mahajid, Mah, Mujahideen. I'm really sorry. Um, Troutman is captured by a ruthless Russian Colonel Zanzen. Zansen, played by Mark De Jong, who submits him to torture. Hearing the news, Rambo volunteers for a top secret undercover mission to rescue his longtime friend. Um, I think this has the better plot than number two, and I think it has the better characters than number two. Um, so let's talk about the cast. So we have, of course, Sylvester Stallone returning as John Rambo. Now, in the previous review, I talked about how in First Blood Part 2, they didn't really continue his story per se. It just seemed like to me it was just another generic action movie. But thankfully, with this movie, they did give him an arc for this movie in the fact that Colonel Troutman, played by once again by Richard Crenna, and the final time by Richard Crenna, is actually captured for once and is subjugated to, like I said in the plot, to torture. So, Rambo actually has a motive to do the things that he eventually does in the movie. It's not just, oh, I was put up to this mission and now I'm trapped here and now I'm just really pissed off. In the first movie, he was pushed too far and he let out all of his anger from the war on, unfortunately, all of these people. I mean, yeah, granted, it wasn't a good thing to do, but at least he had a purpose to do it. Rambo 2, he's just like, okay, I just went on this mission. I got captured. I got tortured a whole bunch. And now I'm really pissed. I'm going to go and kill all these people and go and intimidate this one guy who sent me on this mission in the first place. Rambo 3, like I said, Troutman is captured. He is tortured. He is put in a state where he almost dies several times. And Rambo's like, you know what? Now this is personal now because he is not only my commander, my my ex commander. He's also my friend. This is personal now. I'm gonna kill everyone. So this has more of a purpose, I think, for Rambo to go and do the stuff that he does in this film, way more than he did in number 2. And especially in part 4, but I'll get to that tomorrow. Um, as I mentioned in the plot, we have Mark Jijong as Colonel Zanshan. I'm really sorry if I butchered that. That's probably Russian, which makes sense since he is a Russian commander. Um, I mean, yeah, he technically did fight the Russians in part 2, but it was both the Russians and basically Koreans. Now, this film is just full on Russians, which makes sense because at the time of this film's production, it was nearing the end of the Cold War. So it would have been the perfect time to release this in 1987 because another film that I really am going to talk about at some point, which is my favorite film of all time, The Living Daylights, also addresses this point as well, and I think that film does a superb job as well. Maybe a little bit more than Rambo 3, but this film still pulls the point across that, you know, some Russians can be just straight up assholes. And this one is no exception. He is ruthless. And like I said a number of times before, he submits people to torture. He doesn't care if you're a man or a woman or even a child. If you get in his way and if you piss him off, he will put you through such torture that it probably will mentally scar you for the rest of your life. Um, Even when Rambo is shown the pictures of what he does to even a little kid, he gives him, I believe it's a black eye and a broken, or something happens to his foot. They don't say it, but you can only assume that he's either um cracked, springed, or straight up just broken because it's in a cast. So that means something really bad must have happened to it. So this guy doesn't care what comes between him and the Afghan. Well, he doesn't care who he shoots or who he tortures. He doesn't care. He just wants to get rid of him, which gives, I think, the viewer a much more reason to say, "Hey, this guy's kind of a jerkball. Rambo, go and kick his ass." And obviously, that's what happens in the movie. And I think it superbly outranks number 2 by, having an actual motive for him to go and do the stuff that he did. I know I already mentioned that, but one, Troutman is captured, and 2, this guy's kind of a douche. He kind of just takes whoever he wants and tortures them and possibly even kills them for his own pleasure, just because he's part of the Russians and whatever they say, I gotta do. That just makes you want to kill him even more. Granted, the previous villain from Rambo 2, he did sympathize with him, and that I can appreciate. But this villain, he's just a straight up douchebag. Now I know how some people could think that's kind of a problem with the movie. But I actually think it's a significant step up from number 2 because I see it as the only point that made the villain interesting was that he actually kind of said, "I respect you and I respect that what you do." But for me personally, besides that line that he says to him, he's just a generic Russian villain. I don't think there's any character, like nothing really interesting that you know put the difference between him and any generic Russian villain from any 80s movies. This villain has a purpose, and he has a he has a personality, and I that's what I like, and that's what I want out of my 80s action villains. We have also Kurtwood Smith, surprisingly, as Robert Griggs. He turns up as a small part in the beginning to ask Rambo along with Troutman to come along with him on the mission, and then to bring Rambo the news that Troutman's been captured. Which basically says, "Hey, um, you basically said, hey, here's the ticket to piss you off and go make it go on this whole mission. Here you go." And it's surprising that Kurtwood Smith is actually playing a sympathetic kind of role in this movie. You know, if you go to like performances in like Dead Poet Society, which surprisingly actually came out a year after Rambo 3, he plays kind of a swashy dick in that movie too. It just seems like he's been cast as a generic kind of hard ass. But in this movie, they actually kind of, I mean, yeah, granted, he only pops up for 2 scenes, but the 2 scenes that he's in, they try to make him actually kind of sympathetic in a way. Like well, not sympathetic. They made him into like a good guy and like not make you think, like, oh, is this Kurtwood Smith on screen? Um, you actually made the viewer care about him, and say like, hey, that's kind of cool, but unfortunately, you're the bearer of bad news. We have Sanshin Gay as Moose Muse Ganin. I'm most likely butchered that. Um, I believe he is the. I believe Um, he is the one of the Afghanistan people who helps the one that brings him to the fortress in the first place. He was actually really good in the role in the movie, and I think personally I feel like he should have popped in at least one or two more scenes near like the mid end of the film. But in the scenes that he's in, I think he does a uh an applicable job. Um, we have Du Dudai Shori, I most likely butchered that too, as Hamid, and I believe he's a kid, and I believe he's the kid that like sees Rambo at first and goes, hey, you're actually like he actually goes up and talks to him, and then um after that he actually follows Rambo and Musa to the fortress to help him. And I'm like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but compared to like, I mean, yeah, Rambo basically went in there with nothing. I mean, he's Rambo, so he can literally go into anywhere with nothing. The other guy has like a AK. You have like basically a spring rifle where you shoot and then you have to cock back and then shoot again. Like, how is that? Like, yeah, you might take down a few soldiers, but you're gonna compared to like what they have, you're gonna get hit. And unfortunately, he does. Um, he only pops in like a couple scenes. Um, and it's like most kids in action movies are mostly insufferable to listen to because they're mostly just annoying. And yeah, I agree with that. But there's like one or two movies that I would say, hey, the kid actors are not bad, and they're used to acceptable levels. This is one of those movies because I think, yeah, like he doesn't need to be in the whole movie, or because he only pops in like a couple scenes. He pops in near the beginning when he arrives in Afghanistan. He pops up in the first attempt to try and rescue Troutman, and then he gets shot in the leg, and so basically he can't walk. And then he pops up in the end battle, and then the final scene when Rambo leaves Afghanistan, and that's it. That's all you need him for. Um, and I think he's not bad. I mean, obviously he's supposed to try and play if he actually is Afghanistan, I'm really sorry if this offends you, if you're watching this somehow. Um, but if he's playing, since he's kind of playing the role of the boy, I don't think he does that bad. It's like Steven Spielberg working with children. It's, I mean, it's not that good, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good performance for a child actor around that time, when most kids around then, if they weren't the main characters, were basically insufferable. Um, once one film I can think about right off the head is Home Alone, which is not a bad movie, not at all. It's one of the best Christmas movies of all time. But I forgot what his name was. The kid with the glasses, the young kid with the glasses. I just wanted to punch him in the face because he's so annoying. I think it's Fred or Fudd. It's one of those two. Uh, but that kid is so like insufferable. I just want to punch him in the face. Um, but like this kid, he's not bad. I mean, yeah, he only pops up in like 4 scenes, but that's all you really need him for. And then finally we have Randy Rainey as Kurov, who's basically the big brute of the movie, like how in Rambo First Blood Part 2, there was that guy that Rambo fights in the helicopter near the end, like right before he takes, you know, charge of the helicopter for the final kind of action scene. Um, he fights him at, I believe, the top of the mountain, and it's probably the better fight out of the two. I think the First Blood Part 2 fight, I think it's more I think it's more intense than this fight. But I think the choreography of the fight itself, I think is a little bit better in Rambo 3 than in Part 2. Um, but I think the stakes in Part 2 were a little bit more, you know, the stakes were a little bit higher because, you know, you're fighting in the plane. Like, it's basically either you live or you fall off to your death. Granted, yeah, in Rambo 3, there's that hole in there. I guess spoilers. Spoilers. Yeah, I guess there's that hole, but and then yeah, obviously the cliff edge, but isn't that really going to do anything? Like, there's still like other parts of the mountain that you can save yourself on. Um, with a helicopter, there's nothing really to help you except for like maybe a tree. It's basically either you stay on the plane or you're pancake on the floor. Um, but I do think that the death of the brute in this movie is way more clever and more kind of funnier and way more badass than in Rambo 2. In Rambo 2, he's literally just basically the brute has Rambo on like the edge. Rambo starts choking him, and then he goes in a little bit more. Rambo just lets go, so then he goes flying off, and it's like, oh, at least like we could give him like a punch or something, so that it flies off or something. But no, he just lets go, and then the brute's just like, but in Rambo 3, um, the brute is Kurov, sorry, is doing a bear hug, which is like the most generic brute attack that you can ever think of is just a bear hug. But he's doing that, and then Rambo sees like the grenade pin, and then he pulls it, and then he just like basically just a roundhouse kick to the face, and then it makes him fall down. And so not only, even if he didn't pull the pin, if he acts like, oh, I pulled the pin, and just, oh, you're dead. Even if he didn't pull the pin and it didn't explode when he got to when the rope stopped, he still would have died from a neck crack. Because that rope just literally just jerked him. So it's like, either you get your neck cracked or you freaking explode. So not only he gets, yeah, like I said, basically, not only gets his neck cracked by the rope, he basically explodes from the grenade. And so I'm like, that's how you do Rainbow Death. And then, I think the end fight of Rambo 3, I think it's a lot better than Rambo 2. Because in Rambo 2, you don't really think that Rambo's is in any peril. while like because he's in the helicopter, and then everyone else is basically on the ground. So basically, he's in the helicopter. He's basically playing God. Um, but I like the fact that in this movie they play up the fact that he actually can die. Like after the first attempt to save Troutman when he's in the cave, he pulls that spike thing from his chest that he got during the fight, and he cuts off a bullet and puts the bullet in the one side of the wound, takes like a little torch and puts it at the end so that the flame could minimize the pain as much as possible. Um, and then during the end fight, he not only you know he tumbles off like like what's the worst that's gonna do, but then he gets shot in the leg, and then that's like, oh, he might actually die. But obviously he isn't because he's Rambo. But like, at least in this movie, it's like, oh, he might actually die. And then so not only Rambo gets shot in the leg, Charmin gets shot in the shoulder. So it's like, oh crap, what if he dies? And then like basically this whole mission is pointless. So it's like, oh, like the stakes are way higher in this movie than in Rambo 2. Um, which I personally like a lot better. Um, and then yeah, I just think the ending for this film is a lot better. Well, I'm actually not sure. I think this one's a little bit better, and I'll explain why. So, yeah, granted, Rambo 2 did have that fantastic confrontation between both Rambo and Murdoch. Because, yeah, granted, Murdoch was kind of a dick. So, he kind of did deserve what was coming to him. Granted, it wasn't death, but I think scaring him enough to where he's like, okay, I probably shouldn't mess with him was the best way to go for that movie. But I think for Rambo 3 as the for now end of the trilogy, because for a while this was the last Rambo movie, because it was 20 years before Rambo came out, which I'm gonna be now performing as John Rambo, because I think it's more easier to distinguish the movie as John Rambo than Rambo, because I'm afraid I'll talk about more about that when I get to tomorrow's video. But I think the title John Rambo works a lot better than just Rambo. Um, but I think that the ending for this movie, if it was literally just this movie and that's it. This is the finale. I think this has the best ending out of all of the Rambo movies so far. If I had to rank the ending so far, it would have to be from worst to best. It would be literally be 1, 2, and 3. Because as a send off to John Rambo, so far, I think it really works. Um, I'll talk about more the So Long John Rambo for the Last Blood review, but I'll get to that. Um, but um, but yeah, as a send off, I think this is the best ending we could have gotten at the time. But then, whoever owned the Rambo property back in 2008 decided, nope, we need to make another movie because we need to make the monies. And clearly, they didn't care about quality or control and just made a generic action movie from 2008. And I'll talk about that tomorrow. But, having him say farewell to the kid and, having both him and Troutman drive off, I think it's the perfect send-off for the Rambo franchise. And it would have been perfect if it was just that. But unfortunately, like I said, they made another movie. And to be completely honest, I haven't seen... And I just dropped it. To be completely honest, I haven't seen the fourth film. And I'm kind of honestly scared. But I'll press on because I still got to finish this marathon. Um, but I guess I'll find out tomorrow when I watch this movie for the first time. And speaking of this review, the review would be I would have both titles up because honestly, I don't know which title is better. I think John Rambo would be better, but for just for everyone who it's not gonna stop yelling at me for not including both titles. I'm gonna title in the title of the video. I'm gonna have both of the titles that were used in the American. Well, actually, I'll talk about that when I get uh to the Rainbow review tomorrow. Um, which I will be now referring to as John Rambo because I think that would be way more easier to actually say. Um, but yeah, I think this would have been the perfect standoff if they didn't say, "Hey, let's make another Rambo movie," and they made John Rambo, and then it was just a generic 2000s action movie with a whole bunch of CGI blood. Thankfully, they did bring it back for me with Rambo Last Blood, but I'll get to that later. But really quickly, I want to talk about my favorite scenes. So I'm gonna say first is probably the. This sounds so weird. Is the Goat Carcass football game that they play right before the Russians attack. I think that game is so funny, but also kind of cool at the same time. Because it's like, this is what the Afghanistans do when they have basically off time. And I think that's actually kind of cool. It's like, hey, like, it's like letting the viewer know on something they probably most likely didn't know about the Afghanistans, and I like that. That's a cool touch. Um, my second favorite scene will probably be the the first attempt to try and save Troutman, cause um really I think that's probably the best action sequence so far in any Rambo. Well, actually, no, the final fight scene, is probably the best action sequence out of all the Rambo movies so far. But I think the first attempt to try and rescue Troutman, I think is the second best. Um, my third favorite scene is going to have to be the actual rescue attempt of Troutman, which is basically the second attempt. Because it's like so heroic when they're like about to like torch him. Basically, they're like teasing him with a flamethrower, and then all of a sudden you just hear the guy scream, and you see like a little like knife noise, and the guy falls down, and then it's just Rambo's in there, and then the music builds up, and it's like dun 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 dun, and I'm like, yes, go Rambo, kick their asses, and then that would lead on to probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, besides the final action sequence at the end, is has to be um I would say I don't know how would you describe it, but it's basically when Troutman and Rambo go into a cave system, and then some Russian soldiers follow after them, and it's basically this is like the best example for me of stealth Rambo, because he has the bow with the glow sticks, he has the knife. I think it's perfect. This film has the perfect not only action Rambo, where he's just running around in the broad daylight with a big ass gun, just shooting everybody Rambo, and then there's stealth Rambo, where it's basically him, the bow and arrow, and the bow and arrows, and his knife, and he's just going around either shanking people or blowing or shooting them with an arrow or blowing them up with an arrow. And I think that's the perfect scene to say, hey, here's the different contrast between is the last scene. I would use both this scene and then the final scene as examples for, hey, this is stealth Rambo in the cave system, and the final sequence is action Rambo. And if you combine them both together, you have almost the perfect Rambo action flick. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be as good as First Blood, not at all. But I think so far, this is my second favorite film of the whole series, with First Blood Part Two being in last. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but I think this one, sup- like, um, does everything but way better. Um, so let's get on to the two fun facts. So, did you know that Stallone actually asked for a Gulfstream jet, which at the time cost $12 million, as part of his pay for working on the movie? And he actually did. So yeah, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but he asked for a Gulfstream jet, which I would assume is a very fast jet, which at the time cost $12 million, and um, so I would assume as a part of his actual paycheck for the film, he got along with a plane. Um, now I don't know if this is actually true or not. Uh, it's unfortunate that YouTube has, made, is that if you made your video for kids, you can't have them make comments anymore. But if you have them age restricted, you can post comments however you want. I think it's stupid, unless you're just in the middle. Um, but I don't know if this is true, but follow me at Facebook or Instagram and message me or DM me to tell me if this is true or not. Because I'm not really sure on that. Um, now I know this is true. Is the second fun fact that I have. Um, did you know that Rambo's horse also appears in the Last Crusade as Indy's horse? So yeah, apparently I don't know which horse they're talking about, because I think he uses a total of two in the movie. Itself, I no, I think actually three. He uses one to get from the town to the actual town that he settles in with all the rebels. The second one they uses is when they're playing with the goat carcass, and the final one is when he goes in the final action sequence when he has the Molotov. So I don't know which horse they're talking about. Apparently, one of those horses that Rambo uses in the film is also one that Indiana Jones uses in the Last Crusade. Um, which I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of weird that Last Crusade came out only maybe not even a year after this film came out, and it's like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Um, but yeah, so as you guys may have heard if you as you guys hear over the last 30 minutes, I talked about this film. I think this is personally a better film than Rambo 2 in every way. It improves on it. Like basically everything that he had from Rambo 2, all the main stuff he had from Rambo 2 is significantly improved on for Rambo 3. Um, Besides the Rambo torture sequence, which I think by this point, if they used it again in this film, I think it would be a little bit more stale by this point. Um, but yeah, so um, yeah, I think this film is significantly better than First Blood Part Two in every way. Um, but that's just my opinion. Um, I've heard many people call this the black sheep of the Rambo franchise, and whoever says that, you are dumb, because this is a great action movie, and I think this significantly is a better action movie than Rambo First Blood Part 2. I think that film is more of a generic 80s action movie than this film. So I'm going to give this film the same rating I gave actually no, I'm going to change my rating to what it was. I was originally going to give it the same rating as Rainbow First Blood Part 2, which is a 7 out of 10. But now that I'm actually thinking about it, I'm actually going to put this at an 8 out of 10. Because I think it really improves on everything that First Blood Part 2 did by a tremendous amount. So, I think granted, I think you should pick up all the Rambo movies that's in, on Blu ray or even on 4K. Which, speaking of, so far the first three Rambo movies on 4K look amazing. What do Rambo 4? What John Rambo looks like on 4K? I'm not sure. Um, because I personally haven't seen it even on DVD or Blu-ray. But um, in terms of picture quality for the first three films, I think they look fantastic. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna give this movie 7 out of 10, an 8 out of 10. Sorry, I think everyone should watch this. I think this is a way better film than First Blood Part 2, and I think everyone should watch this significantly more than First Blood Part 2. Now, the first three films, yeah, they have some problems, but you can at least get a generic, fun 80s action movie. Now, this next one, which I mentioned multiple times already, I'm not really sure about because this is the only one so far, as I already mentioned, that I haven't seen yet. So stay tuned for tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking about John Rambo, or Rambo that is known in some countries as well, including the United States. But I'm going to be calling it John Rambo throughout tomorrow's video because I think it's a better title than just Rambo. Which, speaking of, who decided to name this? I think it's stupid. Um, but yeah. So anyway, guys, so stay tuned for tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking about the John Rambo, or Rambo, and apparently, I believe I'm going to be talking about this extended cut. And I don't know if it's the theatrical cut or not. Um, but yeah, guys. So have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned for tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking about John Rambo. Live long and prosper. Out.